Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things college football and all things Giants football. I'm your host, Sal, with my co-host Monty, and a special co-host with us once again. We appreciate him being here, KSIXI. Let's start with you. What's up, man?
I'm doing great. I This is the second time I've been on, and it's always a ton of fun. We had such a good time last year, and I'm excited to go at it again.
For those who don't know, we did KSI is here for the same thing we did last year, which was our comparative big board reviews. So we're gonna roll those out. He's got his, and for those who don't know, give him a follow. It's at KSIXI, right?
That's right.
And that's on Twitter. And he's been around a long time. He's a busy man, so he's probably not as active in the in the content community as he used to be. But he creates an awesome big board. He does some cool stuff. If you follow his page, he does a big board every year. I'm gonna plug you here. He does his plan to fix the Giants. His kind of his autopsy report at the end of the year. So it's all worth paying attention to. I always look forward to it.
Yeah, great follow. Definitely go follow him. Funny thing is for some reason, whenever I go on YouTube to go upload our videos or make edits or something like that, when I start typing YouTube, I just click the first one that in my history that shows up, and every single time, for some reason, is our video that we did last year together. That always brings me that video.
Yeah, I'm in your heart.
Exactly. But yeah, it's our first He's a Giant tradition to do the big board with KSIXI every year. So I'm glad we were able to make it a second annual this year.
And it means we're that much closer to the draft.
Yep.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God. I don't know about you, man. I know you've been doing this a lot longer, or you were doing it a lot longer. Well, for those of us who watch college football pretty much year round, and we're doing these prospect reviews in real time, by the time the month and a half or 2 months before the draft get here, I don't want to hear anything about the draft again.
Fatigue.
I'm tapped out.
There's a lot of fatigue. I sent out a tweet earlier today saying, with the way things are going, we're going to start seeing Quinn Ewers propped up as a first-round pick by the time we get to draft week. It's just how it goes.
They're already talking about Tyler Shuck is a first-round pick. It's crazy. It's everything right now. But you can never trust it, because I remember when Ryan Nassib was supposed to be a first-round pick back in the day.
Well, Tyler Shuck's gonna need a job because he's gonna be Medicare eligible soon, and Medicare may not exist. So Tyler Shuck needs to work. Everybody, help Tyler Shuck find a job and some health insurance. So. All right. Before we get into the big board review, everybody, first of all, thank you guys for being here as always. If you get a chance, retweet the link to the pod. Tell your friends, get everybody in here. It's always fun and always a good time in the chat. And I definitely pay attention to what you guys are doing in there, and it's always a good time. But as always, we're doing a little Giant stuff. Not a whole lot going on. We're still kind of in the waiting game pre-draft, but there is some pre-draft news coming out, Monty. It seems like, according to Jordan Raanan and some, I guess the reports are beginning to trickle in that sound a lot like things did a year ago at this time, which is the Giants were into quarterback, and all of a sudden maybe they're not so into quarterback and they're leaning towards a position player. Raanan said it feels like they like Shedeur, but they don't love Shedeur at 3, and they may be leaning towards either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter if one of them is there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I don't know what their plan is, if they're going to just keep skipping a quarterback every single year. As from their perspective, I really don't understand it. They at some point, to me, they're lucky that they got another chance this year. And the fact that they're going to pass on it again after passing on 3 guys who went top 12, it's a little bit crazy to me. At some point, Timmy, you just got to take a swing on your guy. You only get this job once, as his son put. As a fan, we've talked about this before. Again, I would take Shedeur, but to me, Travis Hunter, we'll get into where we both have him ranked, is a very, very, very special prospect. And if Joe Shane and Brian Dable get fired, I don't necessarily have the most trust in this organization to not ruin a rookie quarterback. And maybe if I felt like Shedeur, and I like Shedeur, but maybe if I felt like Shedeur was a quarterback that like you can't pass on, I'd be more upset about it. But I think he's a good quarterback worth swinging on. But I also think he's a quarterback that we can go. We'll have those type of quarterbacks available again, and hopefully not in a situation where we're just going to ruin this kid. So again, willing to take it. I take it, but they want to get if they want to not ever take a swing on a quarterback and get fired. That's their own choice.
What about you, man? What do you think?
I completely understand the approach for wanting Shedeur, and if we draft Shedeur, I'm not going to be mad about it. Sal, you tweeted out the definition of a word today, or 2 words today. What was that?
Yeah, opportunity cost.
Opportunity cost, right? And a little bit of a spoiler, but I think the opportunity cost of potentially passing on Travis Hunter might just be too much for my heart to take. And I say that because I think there are a lot of facets that go into team building, right? And one thing, and I know quarterback is the most important position, and you have to take swings. You do. But I also think there's something to be said about creating an identity and really leaning into that identity as part of team building. And when you look at Travis Hunter and you plug him in with Paul Simadibo, Javon Holland, Tyler Nubin, Andrew Phillips, if you want to throw Deontay Banks in there, you can. You're creating an identity on defense. You want to put Travis Hunter next to Malik Neighbors and Darius Slayton, you're creating an identity on offense. And I think the insanity of it all is you can play Travis Hunter differently based off your opponent that week. And there's so much from a strategic standpoint, let alone just the talent that he is, that the Shohei Ohtani-ness of being able to play both corner and wide receiver at that level. It just shows how smart he is, one, and just how blessed he is. And so I think being able to force that sort of identity on your team, I think, is invaluable. With Shedeur, I like him. I don't love him. And so it is tough for me to reconcile. He's Cam Ward's, and you'll see it. Cam Ward's my clear number one. Mm-hmm. I think that, and I know you guys have talked about the word ceiling and floor a lot, right? And sometimes we get too carried away with ceiling and traits, right? Monty, I know you're a traits guy, but but I do think that there is a conversation to be had. I know we're not gonna spend too much time on this, but I do think that I see Shedeur in the same way that I see Jared Goff would be a good example of that. I think I see someone where he can play within a system, but we have to build around him, and you have to build around everybody, right? But the top quarterbacks, you can get away with a lot less. And so when I take the two there, I think for me, it's a clear answer. But I also understand that you need to make swings. It's really hard to gauge the quarterback position. I was a Josh Rosen guy. It's tough to gauge the quarterback.
Not
position.
easy.
And if the Giants believe in Shedeur Sanders enough to take him with a top 5 pick, I'm in. That's fine. Mm-hmm. I'm not mad about it.
So, no, I absolutely respect your view. And I think the uniqueness of Travis Hunter, and we're going to get to it too, obviously, when we review our big board, we classify him as different than everybody else. I'll put it that way. The uniqueness of this prospect is one where you have to think twice before you pass on him. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
The reason I tweeted out opportunity cost is because people have been talking about it on various platforms, and it's been discussed now, and it's bandied about as a term on Giants Twitter. And I know you know what it means. I don't think most people who discuss it know what it actually means. I defined it, and this was from the Munich Business School, definition, just to be as precise as possible. Opportunity costs are the potential benefits that are foregone. That's the operative term. The potential benefits that are foregone if a decision is made in favor of a particular option and other alternatives are therefore excluded. So, as amazing as Travis Hunter is and will likely be in the NFL, and I believe he's going to be amazing, does that equate to the potential benefit of hitting on a franchise quarterback? And I would say no. I can't think of outside of Deion Sanders, maybe Darrelle Revis. So we're talking about maybe probably the two greatest cornerbacks in NFL history. I cannot think of a cornerback or wide receiver or anything that is anywhere near the value of a franchise quarterback in terms of impact to an organization. And that's a tall bridge.
If we were talking about Cam Ward, I would completely agree. I wouldn't pass on Cam Ward, but I think that comes down to our evaluations. I think that's what it comes down to.
That's right.
In theory, with your argument, I can't disagree at all. I really can't. And if you have conviction that Shedeur Sanders can be that franchise level player, I wouldn't want to pass on him for Travis Hunter either. 1,000%.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it comes down to what you think the player can be at the next level, and obviously that's a very imprecise science. I will say that I think quarterback discussions this time of year are a little eye-gougingly painful. I think the stuff that gets discussed in terms of some of the traits and things that people are focusing on, it's precision without accuracy, right? You're losing the picture sometimes of what you're really looking for and what really wins in the NFL level. That's a discussion for another day. I think we should actually have that discussion another day about what actually translates, what wins, and I think that's a worthy conversation. But the reason I post that is I think that my argument would be that if you think the guy can be a franchise quarterback, which is giving him essentially a first-ish round grade, that the potential benefit of that quarterback trumps just about everything else. But Travis Hunter does make it difficult. I'm not obtuse to that. He is unique. So. I think that is a discussion going on right now.
Yeah, and I have one follow-up question for you on that. So we're about to get into your board and we'll do it, but you have Travis Hunter 1. We've talked about this. If Travis Hunter went 2, does that change your view at all on what you'd want to do at 3? Or is it still, blue chip player over Shedeur Sanders?
It makes it a lot tougher.
I agree with you.
I also love Abdul Carter. And man, I am longing for the days of, adding Jason Pierre-Paul to the room that we already had at that time with Tuck, OC, etc., Kiwi, etc. And so it would be 100 times tougher. I still think I probably would take Carter because I think that with my evaluation, I think that his ceiling and what he can do in terms of, again, providing another identity for our team outweighs, my evaluation for quarterback. For that quarterback, I should say. That being said, again, it would be much more palatable for me if we chose Shedeur and Hunter was gone. I can say that with Hunter. It would be palatable for me either way, but I think it would be it would be an easier pill to swallow, and I'm not going to be mad at that.
I agree with you because in the sense of passing on a quarterback for Travis Hunter, you're passing on a quarterback for a prospect you may never see again in your entire lifetime. Like truly, we've never seen somebody like Travis Hunter. Abdul Carter is good. He's a good prospect. We've seen better edge prospects than Abdul Carter. He's like he's not even Myles Garrett. And that's not to like shit on Abdul Carter, but like we've seen good.
Who is Myles Garrett? Right.
Yeah. But But yeah, I do want to get into the big board more. Sal, do you have anything else that you want to talk on this? You look like you're thinking about something there.
Well, all I would say is this, and this goes back to Brian Dable and Joe Shane. If they do not swing early on a quarterback, they're fired essentially. And I think that's the probability of them being fired at season's end, or at least Dable being fired at season's end. That probability, that not to give anybody PTSD, but have you ever see the New York Times probability election needle? Like
Yeah.
that needle goes towards like likely outcome, because at that point you have gone 4 years without taking a true swing at a quarterback, and I personally don't think day two quarterback swings are realistic swings unless you're willing to give the quarterback and the coach multiple years, and that's probably not in the cards for the evaluation this year, certainly. Um, and then you're banking on not having a double-digit loss season with Russell Wilson, which with our schedule is tough.
And we do this to ourselves back-to-back years.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's out of their control, but goddamn, why couldn't you just lose a few more games? Come on.
Was it out of their control? I mean, look, Malik Neighbors was hurt in that going into the Indianapolis
That
game.
is true.
And I think teams that were
people are going to come after you for this one, Sal. I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, you know what? He was hurt. He was hurt coming into that game, and it doesn't take much to say our star player, who already missed 2 games due to injury this year, has been nursing injuries all year, is hurt. We're going to hold him out of this game.
I'll say.
Do they win that game against Indianapolis without Malik Neighbors? Probably not, right? He had 2 touchdowns in that game. So I'm just saying there are ways teams do this, where they're like, I've got the number 1 pick. I got 2 weeks to go. Somebody's hurt. I'm resting him. This season's over.
I'll say this, Sal. I think if John Mara gives them assurance before that game that their jobs are safe, I do think Malik Neighbors is sat. Yeah. And I think that was Brian Dable's case to keep his job.
Maybe. Don't know. But anyway, look, all this said, I think that they're staring down the barrel. I've made this case to you, Monte, and I think we had this lively debate last time. I think, KSIXI, I think you were in the chat that day when we were debating how they save their jobs. And I said, I don't think that there are too many pathways for them to save their job relying on Russell Wilson and or Jameis Winston starting the entire year. Because I think to do that, they have to basically have winning records, right? And that's going to be, that's tough, right? They might, things happen. We never know, but it's a tough schedule. The roster is a lot better than it was a few months ago. I give Joe Schoen credit. It looks stronger, but it's still going to come up against some tough competition. So what's their best pathway to potentially saving their jobs? In my opinion, it's if you have a 2004-like season, right, where you start with Kurt Warner equivalent, Russell Wilson, you're 500-ish or a little less midway through the season, you make the switch to the rookie first-round quarterback. He comes in, looks promising. Doesn't have to win a ton of games, but he looks like he can run the offense. He looks like he is validating the faith you put in Brian Dable the day you hired him to develop a quarterback. And all of a sudden, if your rookie quarterback is looking good, Brian Dable's got him looking good, and they finish the season on a positive note, you could be 7-10, 6-11, something like that, but winning a little bit more down the stretch with the rookie quarterback. Rookie quarterback looks good with Brian Dable. I think that's a strong case. The fan base will be excited, looking forward to the following season. It's a strong case to make John Mara don't break this up now. We finally got to the quarterback we wanted.
One thing I'll say,
that still may not be enough. You saw what happened with Matt Nagy and Justin Fields. Same situation.
But it might be their only pathway. That's what I'm saying.
Argument. I'm not. Listen, if they draft a quarterback number 3 overall, I would totally understand. I completely understand from their perspective. I get it. It's not a great place for us to be, because you don't know if they actually believe in the quarterback or if they're doing this for job preservation. But I get it. I totally understand.
Yeah. The one thing I will say, Sal, in the situation that you aligned with, the Eli Manning, Kurt Warner, they had 5 wins with Kurt Warner, and they benched him and ended up with 6 wins. I think you have a much better chance in that situation of saving your jobs sticking with Kurt Warner. If we were in the exact situation that these guys are in right now, sticking with Kurt Warner with 5 wins, than benching him and having your rookie quarterback, look promising but lose games.
Yeah, and it was a little bit different of a scenario because Tom Coughlin was not at the end of his rope
Hmm.
yet. In
Yeah, and that
2000, I mean, he really didn't get in trouble as a coach until he got after the 2006 season. Ironically, right? He had been
mhm,
the Giants head coach. I think that was his first year coaching. In fact, it was 2004, if I'm not mistaken, with
I
Eli
believe
Manning, right?
so. Yeah,
So so it was early on. The timeline matched up. Of course, he hired Coughlin, and then Coughlin they draft Eli, so it was easier. I get that. I'm just saying that I don't see too many pathways for them to preserve their job unless if they don't take a first round quarterback, it really looks like the only narrow path they can walk is that they hope that Russell Wilson kind of finds the fountain of youth a little bit and looks a lot more like 2017, 2018 Russell Wilson and is able to put up, 25 points a game, 26 points a game. And this offense is humming and they're winning 9, 10 games. I don't know any other pathway for them to survive this.
I'll say this. I don't know exactly what it's going to take with or without a quarterback, but I can say this is going to be slim regardless. It may be less slim with the quarterback, but you don't have this long leash no matter what you do.
That's fair.
Absolutely.
All right. It's going to be the discussion, right? Going into the
Yep.
draft, and depending on what they do, we're going to talk about what does it look like. Now we're going to have a lot of clarity in exactly 3 weeks, right? Just under 3 weeks, we'll be making these picks. So, with that, for those of you who remember last year, KSI rolled out his big board. I already hyped it up. It's awesome. I'm actually just looking at it for the first time now because we were working on ours. Um, and we did Monty and I did ours. And KSI, you can talk about your methodology just quickly. Our methodology was we obviously use some consensus. We've been grading for those who've been following all year. We've been grading these players year round, and we have like numeric scoring systems for all of our players. That figured heavily into where we put everybody. We obviously incorporated new information like testing numbers and where things landed as we get to the end of the draft process. And we came up with our board that way. So it's going to look different than what you guys are used to from a lot of other boards, including from KSI's. But why don't we how do you want to do this? You want to go through your big board first, and then we'll go through ours, or how do you want to do this,
Yeah,
Monty? Or do you want to
yeah.
go like 10 at a time?
Let's go through his big board. We'll show ours after, and we'll talk about some differences as we go along here.
All right, man. Why don't we roll yours out,
Let's do it.
All
and
right.
you can tell us how you came. If you don't mind telling everybody a little bit of background on how you come up with your grading system and how you do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so I try and so I have a tiered system, right? Very similar to the way that a lot of teams do. And so, if they're the same color, essentially, I have them listed in a certain order, but you know, they are very close. They're in that same tier, right? So I would say the solid first round, the green, those would be players that I think would be probable first round players in any draft. Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Ashton Janty, top 10 players, I would say, generalizable to any draft. And within those tiers, interchangeable. If you like Armand Mumbo over Mason Graham, I'm not going to argue that. I think they're in that same sort of place because, you know, every prospect has their own different type of play style, different type of archetype that fits with a certain team and a certain scheme.
Mhm.
And then positionally, right, there's no other way of doing things positionally, right? If you need, or if you're looking at a defensive tackle as opposed to a guard, right? And so pay less attention to the actual numbers that they're going to and more so the tiered system. And I think that's the way that I do things. Um, the top 10, I think, is pretty similar to a lot of people. I think there are 3 players here that are a cut above. I'm not drafting Ashton Janty at 3.
Yeah,
It's just not.
no.
I think we all have a little bit of PTSD from that. But I think Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are also a touch above the rest of these players. Mason Graham, I have as my 4th player, but there is a range, and I've been seeing, I would say in December, January, there's been a shift.
Mhm.
I think everybody was putting Mason Graham in with the top 3 guys. I don't in my eyes he was never in the conversation with those 3 guys. Now people are moving him down to 9, 10, 12, 14. I still think he's a damn good player. I think he's a really, really good player. I personally wouldn't be comfortable drafting him at 3. I think there's going to be a player there that's definitely, I think, a step above or a quarterback over him. But I think that he offers so much when it comes to being able to one gap. He's not a great pass rusher by any means. He has a lot to clean up. He is on the ground quite a bit, but you see flashes. You see flashes of greatness. Um, Tyler Warren is a freak. I think he's not quite at Brock Bowers' level, but he size, speed. He's his body control is incredible, and he's also a good blocker. And then we can kind of go down the list. I wanted to actually kind of ask you guys, if any players on this list jumped out at you as being, something that you were curious about or didn't agree with or strongly agreed with. But I feel like the top 20 are pretty chalk in my mind. We're going to see a lot of the same players in the top 20, I would say.
We have some disagreements on where we rank them, but I don't think I disagree with your concepts at all.
Yeah, we had a little bit different, but we have some very similar concept. We had our just kind of you'll see our board in a little bit, but we had to start. We had our blue chippers. We did make one exception though. We had this last year. We had a generational column. In our generational column, we felt Travis Hunter was a step above everybody else. He's a tier of his own. Then blue chippers, we had Abdul Carter, we had Ashton Genty, we also had Mason Graham. We are still there with Mason Graham, and another guy who has been knocked a lot. We still have Will Johnson as a blue chipper.
Yeah,
we still believe that Will Johnson he's been really knocked down by me, and I see you're still very high in him as well from where you've ranked, because I've seen him in the teens and whatnot.
People are taking the injury stuff a little too harshly, I think.
And none of this stuff is likely to be a chronic injury issue with him. And that's the thing. It's just kind of recency bias with it.
And to me, when I think of Will Johnson, I remember Will Johnson, who was, getting multiple pick sixes to start off this year. And I remember Will Johnson, who was following Marvin Harrison Jr., quite possibly the best wide receiver prospect I've ever seen, around the field to beat Ohio State. Like, they had him lined up no matter where and just following him. Like, to me, like, I have Will Johnson like lower than like maybe I had like a Patrick Surtain, but I think they're kind of similar.
I think very similar. That's our comp.
Was on that level. No disagreement there. I completely agree with that. One thing that I want to point out is just how many edge rushers and defensive linemen, not even in the top 20 here, but there's a considerable amount. But in the top 50, this is such a good year to need front seven help, especially on the line. It's honestly insane.
So two names popped out to me on yours that are much different than ours. That you're higher. This one's not much, but you're a little bit. Tell us why you like T-Mac so much, Tatario McMillan.
I think it's with him. I know the comparisons to Drake London and people take that but Drake London's a damn good player right now. I think, and then you saw the viral clip of him, saying that he doesn't watch film.
Yeah. Apparently that was from his freshman year.
Yeah. But I think he's a contested catch guy, right? So he's not going to get a ton of separation, off the snap. But one thing that I really appreciate about him is he has a very diverse way of managing press. Teams didn't press him, and he doesn't have long speed, but he has just enough speed where I think that he he's not going to be one of those guys. You know, you get scared with some of the contested catch guys, but I think that with his body control and he gets just enough separation where I don't think that's an issue. And so I see him as an X number one wide receiver. I don't think he's everybody's cup of tea. I think I know of a few people who really like Matthew Golden above him, and I think those are more of the speed guys. Yeah. Traits guys, right? That like Matthew Golden. But I think that there's a certain level of refinement, his release package, his body control, that I think makes him a little bit more polished, and I think that's what kind of drew me to him. So that's why I like T-Mac quite a bit, and I see him as a Drake London clone, and Drake London went what 7, 8, 9, somewhere in that range, right, to the Falcons. So so that's kind of where I see him. This is a weak top 10 overall in my mind, right? In most drafts, T-Mac wouldn't be a top 10 player. But for me, he's my wide receiver too, mine behind Trev. But I think he's just he can play that isolated X and go up and get it. So I think he can help a lot of teams that need that.
We're not super high on T-Mac. We weren't when we did our review, but I do think he's getting a little bit too much slack for things that he doesn't do well, because he didn't need to do those things well to win in college.
Right.
And like he's not a speed guy, so knocking him for long speed issues or 40 times, I think, is kind of silly. It's almost like the analogous thing to Kyle Hamilton, which happened a few years ago, right? He wins, as you mentioned, with a diverse set of release packages at the line of scrimmage. He doesn't separate, but he not only has wingspan and height, but he high points every catch. I don't want to turn this into a T-Mac episode, but he has a knack for high pointing every catch. He's unreachable on those contested catches, like just physically unreachable, and he has phenomenal hands, right? So those few things, he gets off the line of scrimmage, he makes himself a gigantic target, and he high points with his wingspan. Like he's not going to be a burner and this like real big play guy. I kind of comped him to Mike Evans in many ways, because I don't think when you watch Mike Evans, you're ever really wowed play to play by these freakish abilities, but he's just consistently winning, right? He's consistently winning down the field. He's consistently winning everywhere. He's another guy who can be a good contested catch guy. He's a good, not elite route runner in my mind, right? And he's just a steady producer. Guys like this tend to have long NFL careers as long as they avoid injuries, and they're generally like 1,000 yards, 7 to 10 touchdown guys, pretty much year over year, right? So there's a lot of value in that, right?
Yeah. I think for Sal and I, and we don't have McMillan like super low or anything like that, but
he's not our number one. But he's
not a one or two, but I think Sal and I both have a preference. It's honestly not even like speed or size. Sal like leans a little bit more of the more explosive guys, but we both are just like, we're big on the route runners, the guys who can have a little bit more wiggle in their hips and stuff like that at the wide receiver position. So we have a little bit of an inherent bias against a guy like McMillan, because he does have that well for his size. He's just that's not necessarily his game.
Really agree.
But I will say, like, one comp I've used, not an actual comp, but like McMillan is almost like what people wanted Quentin Johnston to be a few years ago. Like they pretended Quentin Johnston is what McMillan is, when McMillan is actually that. He's actually like body control, great hands, big wide receiver, and that was never Johnston.
That's very funny. So you know who I was gonna actually mention. So one guy I'm actually not super high on is Alec Ayamanor. He's Quentin Johnston to me.
I agree. Not the best hands. It's okay route running, just not
body.
Yeah, exactly. And so I agree. No, Johnson. No, T-Mac is not that.
No,
Quentin Johnson. I mean, I've been calling Quentin Johnson Taldale Robinson for 3 years. And he's a gigantic body catching slot receiver is what he is.
I comped him to LaVisca Chenault coming out.
Yeah. But no, I appreciate your explanation there. Let's go through your list. And so you have the tiers here, and I mean, I'm going through your 4 through 17, which is where you have your solid first round grades, and that begins with Mason Graham and ends with Jahad Campbell, and everybody in between for the most part is solid. I don't think you'll find too much disagreement with this.
Mhm. We're both very high in Walter Nolan.
Yeah.
He's gotten dropped in some people's. He's very, very high in ours, but he's still really high in yours.
And you'll see you have Malachi Starks kind of where people have him. We don't have him that high, and we like Malachi Starks, but we like some other people at safety. Shamar Stewart. Let's talk about him for a second. He's interesting. So you have him at 18. I don't want to get into the quarterback thing. You have Shedeur at 19. I think consensus has him right around 19, 20 most of the places. And I think you had Cam around 9 or 10, and that's kind of where he lands on most boards. But Shamar Stewart's an interesting guy, right? And I'm curious what your take is on him because you have him at 18. He's the first person of your round 1-2 grade. A lot of controversy about this guy. So what's your take on him?
So I had a tweet out on him maybe a couple weeks ago where I said, Shamar Stewart is Trayvon Walker. He's Jadeveon Clowney. And I think those are two pretty good comps for him at the next level. I mean, you see his size there. He's a big dude who is insanely athletic, right? Freak levels of athlete. But, one, you question the production, right? He had very little production. And so that does give you a little bit of a pause, right? And then you look and you see why he just can't finish, right? He can't string together a good pass rush. And so
he's a pressure machine. That's the question. Do you care about pressures or do you care about finishers?
You want to finish. Right? And so and both Trayvon Walker and Jadeveon Clowney went number 1 overall. And they went number 1 overall for a reason, because these teams thought that they could polish something, and use those traits and, create this monster, right? And so I do think that there is upside there, right? With Shamar Stewart, just by way of traits. And this is a traits-based ranking. That's why I have him that high. But maybe it's recency bias with those two guys, but it also gives me pause, and there we have seen a lot of players, a lot of edge rushers that, we would classify as raw and, didn't have a pass rush plan and just thought that was something that was correctable, and it just doesn't work out. Kayvon Thibodeau is a great example, right? He doesn't have a follow-up move, and where Kayvon, the way Kayvon wins is if he has to win instantly. He has to win with this first move, otherwise he's out of the play. And so it's kind of like that with Shamar. He will get close, but he doesn't have a plan. And so that has been sort of an adjustment in how I see players. If it was like 2-3 years ago, Shamar would be a lot higher on my board, but this is kind of where I land there. I see the upside. I see, there have been talks that he's going to be a top 10 guy. I can't get that. That's too rich for me. But that's kind of where I land on him. There's like a lot of buyer beware with him, but I can see the upside.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair because, that upside got Trayvon Walker 1 overall. And, you have him here at 18, which, big difference there. So I think at some point, you have to decide where that juice is worth the squeeze.
I think for those who are interested, we notice this. If you want to see the difference between the two edge rushers in Texas A&M, the best game to watch is against Missouri. Because the A&M edge rushers rotate, right? Like Shamar Stewart and Nick Scarton would flip sides frequently. And Monte and I noticed when we went over Membu was like, he's still somewhat raw, but he didn't lose to Shamar Stewart at all in that game.
Yeah.
Like he had Shamar Stewart in hell that whole game. Yeah. Because Shamar Stewart is just, I'm going to run into you, right? I'm going to run into you and try to drive you backwards. And and he could go nowhere with Membu. He had no, like you said, he had no counter, nothing. Tried to bull rush him,
And
got nowhere.
Membu has short arms too, which makes it even
Right,
more impressive. You know,
correct. And he was able to get those arms into Shamar Stewart's chest and drive him backward, like pretty consistently. Whereas with Nick Scourton, and he's not like some star. He's a good player, but Scourton beat Membu a few times, like with some outside inside moves and a couple of spins and counters. Like he showed that if you have a counter move, you can beat Armand Membu to the inside, and get around that mammoth human being. So I thought that was a good illustration of the two of them. So I actually agree with your take on Stewart. We're actually lower on him than you are, even, and I think we discounted some of the traits when we did our
I
evaluation.
think that's reasonable, right? I think the only reason he's this high for me is because of that ceiling, but I can appreciate the floor with him.
Yep. All right, let's go through more of your big board here because I love this. So you have
Oh, one
go ahead.
second, real quick, to
Go
anybody
ahead.
who's watching on YouTube. KSIXI sent me his big board, and I just for viewability, because it's just such a beautiful looking board, we went ahead and put this into. We talked about in a previous episode, but Matt Owen has a Google sheet out there. So what you're looking at minus, we took this like color coding the stuff from KSIXI's big board and just kind of combined them a little bit. But this is all from Matt's sheet. It's public, it's free. So I'll put that in the podcast and the YouTube and all that. But if you're interested in making a big board, like you can just click here, click a name.
It was super easy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is awesome. It's a very cool
yeah.
tool, and
So shout
you
out
click
Matt.
around. Yeah, all the information here, super awesome. Shout out Matt Owens. Yeah,
Owen at Professor
Owen.
Professor O underscore NFL. Matt Owen. He is a Cowboys content creator. He's a good dude. Been talking ball with him for a few years now. He put this together, and a lot of people appreciate it. So, um, I'm sorry, I just noticed the chat. But yeah, take a look at it. It's awesome if you're making your own big board.
All right, so let's get into the rest of this one here. Let's see some guys that I noticed we were different on. Here's one. Donovan Ezuraku. This is a
I'm
guy
really
that
high.
it's a guy we reviewed recently, and we liked him, but we didn't love him. So tell me why you liked him so much.
All right, so he gives major Aziz vibes, and he gives major Aziz vibes, but I loved Aziz coming out of Georgia.
Fair.
Well, that
Um,
explains it.
I'm a sucker for bend and these seek and destroy type of edge rushers, which is what Ezzy is, to a T. I think he's not quite so polished, but I think if you're looking for a guy that's basically, I was gonna say Timu Abdul Carter, but that's being disrespectful. I would say, maybe like a late round one, early round two version of Abdul Carter. If you miss out on Abdul Carter, I think Ezzy is a great consolation prize. He plays the same way. If he doesn't win again, and he has some of the same issues that happen with some of these guys who play like Aziz. If he doesn't win instantly, he's not going to win. And so you are not going to be super, super happy with him setting an edge for you. So he's not a complete player, right? But I think that he is, certainly a player that is capable and has the upside of having 12, 13, 14 sacks a year. And so I think that he had a lot of flashes, right? Flash after flash after flash after flash, with these quick wins, and I think that is something. Bend is translatable at the next level, and he doesn't have the injury concerns that Aziz has. So, I think I really, really like him. I go so far to say that he and Michael Williams, Michael Williams is top 10 for a lot of people. They're very different players, but I have them basically I have them, at the same grade. I think Ezzy can be a very, very productive pass rusher for a team that can use him properly.
Yeah, I'll say I really liked his like all his pass rush moves and whatnot. I thought he had really good pass rush tool set. Tempoed his pass rush as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean he's a mature pass rusher. But again, he needs some secondary moves. He needs to learn how to set an edge. So I understand those issues with him, but I think he's juiced up, and I think that a lot of his traits are translatable.
What I liked about him when I remember watching him was that he has, like Monty mentioned the word tempo. I think that's the key to his pass rush plan is
Yeah,
that he sets up tackles with a really nice outside inside move. I'm sure you saw it a bunch of times on tape where he would false step to the outside and quickly counter inside, and he would go almost untouched to the quarterback from the inside. I know it happened over and over and over again on tape. So it wasn't just like against one left tackle. He did it to
yeah,
multiple teams, and they know it's coming. And there's something about how quick he gets to that first step to the outside that he can then tempo and go inside that people just have a hard time stopping it. So I think he has a very high floor as a situational pass rusher. I would agree with that. I don't view him as a starting three down edge right now, and that's why we were a
not right
little
now.
lower.
I understand
Yeah.
that. I again, I understand that for sure. I just like the upside quite a bit.
All
Sal,
right.
do you have anybody in this group that you wanted to ask him about?
And so we're in the round. There's still he gave him a first second grade, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Um,
1 to 2 we're in right now.
No, I think this is a solid group. For those who can't see it clearly, I mean, 18 to 28, Shamar Stewart, Shedeur Sanders, Mike Green. We should talk about Mike Green, Luther Burden, James Pierce, Colston Loveland, Donovan Ezeraku. Michael Williams is right after him. He's an interesting one. To me, he's the Trayvon Walker of this class, honestly, as well.
I,
They're both like they're very similar.
yeah.
Azaria Thomas, Gray Zabel, Emeka Ibuka. I think we're a little higher on Emeka. Other than that, I think that this is a fairly similar board to where we are.
Yeah, I haven't really watched. I don't know if you have. We didn't rank him, Sal, and I haven't watched him. Like, and Azare Thomas, have you watched him at all, Sal?
I have, and I like him a lot.
He's sticky.
He did, he is sticky.
He's
Um,
very sticky.
he didn't make our big board, our top 50. But that's only because I think that a lot of players we did watch that we value, they just kind of eked him out a little bit, but he would have been right there. So we didn't have him in our top 50, which is going to differ from a lot of other people. And I did watch him, but I just thought there were other players that had more value. So
Yeah,
I bumped him down.
I
I'm
definitely feel
not
like
high
he's
on
a
this corner
value
class
guy.
at all, really.
Hmm.
I mean, once you get past, Jade Barron, well, and once you get past like the top 3 or 4, um, it's really just it's basically pick your archetype when it comes to corner, and Thomas. Um, I hate making comparisons to Giants, right? But he does remind me a little bit of Deontay Banks in the sense that he is a very, very strong press corner that gives little separation, and that's because his hips are so good. He does have some issues with in breaking routes, same as Banks, and he doesn't make that many plays on the ball, same as
Yeah,
Banks.
his ball production
Um,
is why he didn't make my top 50. But yeah,
yeah, he doesn't have any ball production, but neither did Drew Phillips. But Drew Phillips was also a 3rd round pick, so I get it.
Mhm.
But I think that he has the makeup, and he also has some athleticism concerns, right? Which is different from Banks. But I think that he's a solid cornerback 2 in the league all day, in terms of his fundamentals and just again his ability to stay. He has an understanding of space. He is a polished press corner, and would he also avoid tackling Hurts? He's a pretty solid. I don't think he'd miss tackling Hurts.
Yeah.
But he was definitely an interesting one. I know I'm a bit higher on him than consensus. But Florida State was, a dumpster fire all season. He was one of he and Joshua Farmer were a couple of the, players that actually did something.
And it's easy to be a part of a dumpster fire when your entire team's bad. So it's good to see guys stand out among that.
Before we go to your next tier, I do want to make a point that Monty and I have felt was pretty strong in this class. You already made a point that this is sort of lacking at the top. I would say from around player 13 or 14 on our big board to about player 50, the gap is minuscule. And I mean minuscule. Like you could have thrown a dart with a lot of these guys. How did you feel putting this more together?
Yeah, I think that it gets really muddy. I think the word that I would use is mud. I mean, there's
That's
not.
exactly what I used.
Yeah, it's you could make argument, and that's why I'm not going to push back. If you have a different opinion, if you say, my number 20 guy is your 50th, like I'm not gonna push back against that because
Not in this class. Yeah.
not in this class.
Yeah.
No, but I
remember last year it was such a clear delineation.
Oh yeah.
Here's your blue chips. Here's your 15 or 16 true first rounders in any class. Here, blah, it was so clear in every category, and it's just not like that this year.
We went like 40 deep with first rounders here. We loved last year.
Yeah.
And look at how they're performing. They're good players that have come out of that class already.
Look at the value that came in the second round. Look at the Eagles got Cooper DeJean. Look at Braden Fisk. Like those guys went in the second round. Like
didn't Ladd McConkey go in the second round?
These guys would have all been like very high up on this board for me. So I like the depth in this class, but the first round last year was so much better. And I mean, I texted Sal when I was like at pick 10 doing this. I'm like, this gets muddy fast.
To be fair, around pick 6 it gets muddy.
Yeah, I guess let's go into the next one with this rounds 2 to 3.
And so you have players 29 to 51, rounds 2 to 3. So you cheated and gave us 51. So, but that's fine.
No, he went. He has a good bit here. So we'll switch over at 50 and take a look at ours. Then we can finish out looking at the rest of his.
Yeah, I
know. Kenneth Grant is an interesting player. Maybe it's the helmet, but he does remind me a lot of Mozzie Smith, actually quite a bit. They're both big body two gappers. Mozzie, I think, had a little bit more upside as a pass rusher. He had a quicker first step, but I think Grant has a little bit of that capability as well. And so I think that this is why pick 34 is, this is one reason why I don't really care for Mason Graham at 3, because I think pick 34, you look at how many defensive linemen are gonna probably be there. That fits. Derek Harmon. I have nothing against Derek Harmon. I would, I asked Monty, and Monty's like, you're a bit low on Derek Harmon. It's not because I have anything against Derek Harmon. It's just I like a lot of players in this range. Derek Harmon, similar. He can one gap, he can two gap. I have some questions about his pass rush ability, but I think that he's obviously going to be a plug and play starter for the vast majority of teams out there. Ty Williams, another big body dude. And I mean, you can go down the list, right? Darius Alexander, more of that, prototype 3 technique. And it's, again, pick what you want, right? Pick the play style that you want for the scheme that you want, and it's reasonable. I really like Kenneth Grant. I think what's what's really amazing about Dex is that you could put him at nose, and he's the best pass rushing nose of all time. And you could put him at 3 technique, and he's the best run defending 3 technique of all time, right? And so you have that flexibility with Dex. And so you can go and pick your favorite defensive tackle, put him in, and in the best position that he would be to flourish, and Dex is going to be just fine. I am very, very interested in putting in some of these bigger bodied guys like Ty Williams or Kenneth Grant next to Dex, simply because our run defense is so disgustingly bad. And, Roy Robertson Harris and Jonathan Ledbetter aren't really doing a whole lot for me when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Let Bobby O, run freer than he did last year. And we're gonna see our run defense get a lot better, because I think our pass defense, got huge upgrades, but Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland aren't necessarily the best run defenders either. So you look at the defensive tackles in this area, and there's a lot of upside here.
Our pass defense won't have a shot to make any plays unless we can stop the run, and that's what happened last year, right? If teams know they can run the ball at us, that ball's not going down the field a whole lot. They can nickel and dime us to death in the ground game. So this has to be a priority in this draft.
Yeah. So it's an interesting way to look at it. Sal and I, we look at it similarly, but we've kind of been more. I mean, you obviously want a defensive tackle who can do both, especially if you're doing it at 34. Yeah. That's obviously the goal. But Sal and I have definitely looked at this where we felt like the real advantage you could get is if you get a good pass rushing defensive tackle who constantly gets one-on-ones with a
which
guard.
He will.
Which he will because of Dexter Lawrence. But I definitely understand the idea of, you could totally fix this run defense by sticking a big run stuffer in the middle and let Dexter Lawrence move over the 3 tech and just dominate there.
I think we need both. I actually think we still need to ideally come out of this draft with 2 defensive tackles. It doesn't have to be, on day 2 only, but I feel like you want a guy who's going to get the opportunity to one gap, because let's be honest, the 3 tech you put next to Dexter Lawrence, if he's a pass rusher, he's going to get a chance to one gap. He's going to have that opportunity. He's going to get a lot of one-on-ones. If he's quick and gets skinny and gets in, he can be a disruptor. If he's powerful and gets, pass rush through bull rushing, that's fine too, because he's going to get one-on-one. So I want one of those guys. And you definitely need a run stopper. You need another guy who can eat blocks and stop the run game. They're typically cheaper. They're cheaper in the free agency market. They're also cheaper in the draft. You can get those guys later in the draft, like late on day 3.
If you a little later on the draft, he's not in my top 50. I don't know if you guys have watched him. Monte, I mentioned him to you. Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's your ideal.
That's your pass rusher. Yeah.
One gapping, just, hey man, don't even worry about run defense or trying to anchor down. Just go straight and just try and hit the quarterback. Just hit that gap.
I'm more of an Aeneas Peebles guy myself,
Peebles is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And obviously I would love Walter Nolan to follow this spot, but that seems like a pipe dream.
Just keep praying that guys like Daniel Jeremiah are right about where.
I mean, there's something up with him and the way he rubs teams. And when we get to our board, there's a definite lack of, consistency in how he grades out as a prospect and how he's being viewed on these mock drafts. There's something there that scouts know, that teams know, that we don't know. That is concerning.
And to me, I almost feel like these, I could be wrong. Maybe they just totally see something we don't see, and there's really all these concerns, and maybe it's it. I also feel like they might just be baking these concerns that we really don't know about into their ranks.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I think so too. But Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and to the point we were just talking about defensive tackles. Two guys that Sal and I take constantly, and like the end of our mock drafts is, if we need the pass rusher, you can get Howard Cross the third, take the legacy pick, good one gapper. If you need the run stopper, we got a Nazir Stackhouse from Georgia, big body, you can just plug holes. Two guys to take late are just good football players, deep D line.
Or even the Nebraska kid, Robinson. I mean, these are big dudes who can shut down the run, and they're relatively cheap, right? In draft currency, they're cheap. I think you will always get these big freaks who can just stop the run late. They may not be Tyleik Williams, right? But they're plenty good if you have Dexter Lawrence next to them and you've got a pass rusher on the other side. And I'm kind of looking at it that way. Yeah.
One player.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, one player I wanted to point out that the Giants were recently linked to is Carson. I can't. So Schlesinger.
The linebacker.
UCLA. He's my linebacker too, behind Jihad Campbell, and like I saw Leo Chanel, like that. He looks like Leo Chanel to me, not because they're both white. But just the way that he runs, his athleticism, and his range, he's an above average cover guy. He is very good post snap processor, and he's quick and decisive. And he is someone that I think if you brought, I don't think UCLA blitzed him a whole lot. But I think that he would be someone that you could bring, in that Micah McFadden role, going downhill as well, and he'd be successful. I think he's someone that is not gonna get to 65. But if we did think about D-Kid saying he doesn't shed like Chanel, no, that's his big issue. That is his big issue. That's why he's not a first round pick. Because he does have some trouble getting off blocks. But if you can keep his shirt clean with, say, a Kenneth Grant or one of these big dudes, I mean, I think he's someone worth trading up for from 65 if he falls to the 50s.
Interesting.
And we did have a private workout with him, so that is very exciting.
I like his coverage ability as well, DK. Yeah, he's an interesting one. But so the way you described him, so you're telling me the Broncos are going to get him, or Jim Leonard's going to get his prototypical linebacker.
The Broncos don't need to do anything more with their defense, man. Their defense they don't need any more defenders.
Or you can thank Jim Leonard for Bobby Okereke, right? I mean,
that's true.
And so they took him over in Indianapolis and really developed him. I think he was a third-round pick, if I recall, out of Stanford, and really became an outstanding. They took the athletic traits guy and they turned him into a linebacker, and we're benefiting from that. Although not as much last year, but I think Bobby Okereke is still a very good linebacker, and
absolutely,
I'd like to build around him. I mean, I have a little bit of a different take on linebacker since we're talking about it. I kind of want the do it all guy, but I really want to emphasize that you need a guy who can shut down the run and be solid in zone as a linebacker, right? The way I'd like to design defense.
Your guy's Demetrius Knight.
Yeah, but he would go a little higher than my liking. I love, for example, Danny Stutzman out of Oklahoma, who I think really fits that bill nicely. He's a throwback. Yeah, he really is a throwback linebacker, and he moves well in zone. He's got a nose for the football and just always around it, always around the play. That's when you watch Oklahoma defensive plays, Stutzman is always on the play, and that's what I look for in linebackers. Are you there? Right? Are you in on the tackle? Are you following the ball carrier? Do you know where the quarterback's going? Those post-snap instincts and processing. That's, like you mentioned, that's very important. So I think he's a good value for. I think he's going to be there on day 3. So that's where I would target that type of prototype. I feel a little less comfortable with the way this big board is going to probably shake out on draft day with taking a linebacker on day 2.
Yeah, that's also quite fair. That is also quite fair.
our chat's hounding you a little bit. They want to know why you have Donovan Jackson so low at 51.
Well, don't worry, folks. You're going to see our big board in a few minutes, so
Yeah.
relax. Let's hear. Let's hear
I,
your. Let's get time to talk about the linemen. Like you got the linemen here. Some of them. Tell
yeah.
us what you think.
Yeah. So, okay. All right. So I like Donovan Jackson. I do. I just, so I think for me, he's going to be great in a gap scheme, but I don't think he has the athleticism to get out in space. And I don't think, and I think that's what gives me hesitation on him.
Mhm.
I think that, I think he has adequate foot speed. I mean, he's not a tackle. He's going to be a guard. OSU disrespect. I have Josh Simmons so high, um, despite the injury. But I just think that he's tailor made for a gap scheme. Um, I think he's could be okay in zone, but I mean, you look at his body type and you look at the way he leans forward. You want him pushing forward, and you really wish that you saw him getting out on some of those power runs and getting out in space and getting to the second level. And I just I don't think he has the athleticism to do that well. And that's the reason why I have him a little bit on the lower end. But I still think he's a great player. And again, right? So you see, I don't know where my round two, early round three, the yellow starts. Is it at Kenneth Grant at 30? No, it's Kelvin Banks.
Kelvin
Listen,
Banks, yep.
I am, like I said, my number 51. If you put him at 30, I don't have a problem with that. It's just
Mhm.
that is my one concern with him. But he's a good prospect. I mean, I wouldn't be upset, if he went in the top, in the high 30s. I think that's a reasonable thing. I just like some of the guys a little bit more. I'm a big Marcus Mbo fan. He had a rough Senior Bowl, um, but I think his movement ability, his foot speed, and his balance are incredible. He looks like so, and I really like Zach Tom coming out, and
Mhm.
Zach Tom is actually,
I love Zach Tom coming out. Look at him
and
now
he's actually carved out a starting role with the Green Bay. I
as a
know
tackle.
Zach Tom is a little bit of a mighty mouse, and Marcus is 6'4", but um, that's still not huge for a tackle. He's small. Marcus is small, but he gives me very strong Zach Tom vibes. And so I think that in certain schemes, I think Marcus and Bo can be very, very successful. Um, Inside, I would try him at tackle, but inside for sure, I think he would be a great guard.
Question for you. With Donovan Jackson, do you see him as a guard or a tackle in the NFL?
Guard. I see him as
So
guard.
I definitely saw him as a guard, up until that stretch where
The
he
playoff run,
that playoff run,
from the Michigan game through the national championship game.
he was so good during that run.
Yeah.
And I started to question myself, is this guy actually a better tackle than he is a guard? Because I felt like that was some of the best tape I saw of Donovan Jackson was during that run.
Well, let's talk. So this big board by Matt, for those who haven't looked at it yet, what's great is when you go through the sub tabs by group, it gives you players' height, weight, their measurements, their PFF grades. It's awesome, right? Their testing numbers, and you can play with it at home and look at it. But we had this question like, is Donovan Jackson really a tackle? The way he played, I mean, you have to start thinking, can he be a tackle, right? Because he played so well down the stretch with basically no warning, right? He was recruited. I think he was the top
Yep.
guard in the country when
Yep.
when he was
Mhm.
recruited to Ohio State.
Was.
Played well, right, in the first couple of years. Goes to left tackle because Josh Simmons gets hurt. Has a rough go of it early on, but then gets better and better and better, and really got almost dominant towards the end of it. And then you're like, is this a freak, like flash in the pan? And I look at the measurements here. So he's 6'3" and 5'8". So, maybe a tiny bit on the smaller side in terms of height, but right there for a tackle. 315, so a little lighter than your typical tackle, but right there. 9 7/8 inch hands. Okay, you want them around 10 inches, but it's kind of right there. But here's where I was really shocked in a good way. 33.5 inch arm length, which is he's above that threshold, right? That 33-inch threshold you want to see from your tackles. 83 3/4 inch wingspan. Now that's a massive wingspan. This is a big dude. When you go back and watch his tackle tape, he uses that wingspan nicely. He knows how to use it. And I think he showed pretty good footwork as a tackle, where I thought, okay, is he going to be an elite tackle at the NFL level? Probably not. But is he a guy that can, play tackle? Could he be like a Jermaine Illuminor level tackle in the NFL? I actually think he can.
And I thought was interesting is you compare him to his teammate here, 33.5 inch arms and 83 3/4 wingspan. You look at Simmons, 33-inch arms, 82-inch wingspan. So you see Simmons, who sits there a little bit more on the threshold, granted bigger, more athletic, all that type of stuff. But it was interesting when you kind of like think about, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure this out myself. I mean, but the reason I like Jackson so much is because I like him at both. That's why I like Jackson.
That's fair. That's
a lot of value. Yeah. But I hear you. He can only play one position regularly at the NFL level, so you have to kind of decide where you want to put him. But to me, he's the kind of guy that if you draft him, you can start him at guard and be solid. I think I know what you're talking about on the second level. Like I think he has plenty of athleticism to get to the second level. I think his technique in getting to the second level, getting to his landmarks, and actually getting down low and not getting forklifted, that needs some work. Right, I do think there's some work there, but I think he has the tools and the traits to be a very good zone blocking guard, especially when he's climbing. But I hear what you're saying, that he didn't put it all together yet there. So right off the bat, he's probably more of like a mauler in a gap scheme than he is an athletic zone guard. I would agree with that. All right.
Do you want what else? Should we move over to our top 50 and then we can finish off, we'll look at the last few of KSIXIs after we get through our 50?
Sure.
All right.
Let's pull up the board. So we have a slightly different grading system. We didn't color code it. Sorry for whoever's still awake and needs colors.
Yeah, I put more effort into his big board than mine with the format.
If you are sleepy, make sure you choose Celsius sparkling grape. If the official, hold on, let me get this right. The official, yet still somehow unofficial drink.
Sponsored?
He's a giant bot. So anybody from Celsius is watching, we need money, so please sponsor us. We plug you every single week. Yeah. Or Celsius. We can be paid in Celsius. Sparkling grape. I'll send you my address. All right. So our big board. Travis Hunter is in a category of his own, and that category is generational. We don't use that term lightly. Monte and I have been big on this Hunter versus Carter debate. I don't think they're in the same stratosphere. And I say that with all due respect to Abdul Carter. I think players like Abdul Carter can be really excellent players, but they do come out every year or two. Travis Hunter is such a unique prospect. He was our wide receiver 1, and by the end of the season, you could argue he was cornerback 1. We still have, I think, Will Johnson a little higher than him as a cornerback, but what he does as a cornerback is uniquely specific to what wins in the NFL, which is he takes the football away. There's no more valuable trait for a defensive back than getting interceptions, because that flips the field, and interceptions and turnovers have more impact on win-losses than any other defensive metric. So he does that with the precision you would expect of an elite wide receiver. He is special, and we can go on and on about it, but I do think Travis Hunter is in a category of on himself. So he's number 1 in the generational group. We only had 4 blue chippers beyond Travis Hunter, and we ranked them from 2 to 5: Ashton Genty, Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, and we have Will Johnson in that category. So we'll stop there for a second. What do you think about that so far?
I'm I can't argue any of that. I can certainly see. I personally, and again, this is nitpicking. I would put Abdul Carter above Mason Graham. But apart from that, um, I think that this is a completely reasonable big board. I think we had Jelon Walker around the same, Armand Membo the same. We're very high on Walter Nolan. Um, um, why? What is your concern? I should say with Jade Barron, because I think we had a pretty big split on Jade Barron. I think I
Where
had
did you
him.
have him?
I think I had him at
Was he in your
6.
top 10? Okay.
He was 7. He was 7 for me.
Yeah. So Monty and I had a little bit of disagreement today there.
Mhm.
To be totally frank, I liked him a lot. Personally, when we watched Andrew Makuba, I felt like both Makuba and Barron were constantly playing off each other, which was beautiful. Like in a perfect world, you get both of them because it's rare to see that kind of synergy between two defensive backs the way they played, which was very impressive to watch. I like him a lot, but again, he I think what hurts him, in my opinion, and Monty, I'll let you talk about it, but his arm length is a concern. Now, I don't
Yeah.
want to go just by traits, but he is sub 30-inch arms, which for an outside corner, it does get a little iffy. But what do you think, Monty?
Yeah, I think that was a huge part for me. I certainly could have him higher. Like I said, it gets really muddy really quick for me. He's pretty close to those guys, but yeah, I think not getting over that 30-inch threshold, being a little bit of a lighter corner underneath that 200 pounds, that just knocked him down a little bit for me. But I certainly could see a case for him over a lot of these guys. Yeah, I mean,
I see him completely as a nickel. I see him playing inside. I don't see him playing outside.
so
So
I saw him.
but does that
I
not
saw
affect your
him.
valuation then?
yeah,
Huh?
that would hurt him for me.
That would hurt him. Okay, well, I feel like nickel. Most teams play mostly nickel now.
Mhm.
And I think you have to with the way the game is evolving. Although now, with running backs, we might be seeing a little bit of pullback on that. But I think we saw just how well Sainristil was able to play for the commies. That I think having a player like that, a DJ Reed type player, that and despite how light he is, he was still a willing tackler. You know, he wasn't Tay Banksing. You know, a lot of these teams. And I think, I just think that, you know, I would take a top 3 nickel over, like a top 15 or 20 outside corner, in my mind. I just fell in love. I mean, I fell in love with the way he played.
Yeah.
He's just like one of my, like how some, we have, our guys. He's one of my guys that I really
No,
enjoy watching.
I totally hear you. I mean, he was a really enjoyable watch. I have
For
nothing
sure.
against him on tape, and sort of goes against my usual view of things, which is the tape is king and everything else is just kind of nonsense. But
Yeah.
there are certain thresholds that they give me pause. They really do. And I
I get
wanted to
it.
go through a little bit of data here. It's not just the arm length. I went through what are viewed as sort of the top, and then you can do this on the file that Matt created. The top 34 cornerbacks. There are 34 cornerbacks in the draft. His wingspan, it's not just his arm length. His wingspan is 73.5 inches.
Yeah.
For perspective, Travis Hunter, 76 and 7/8 inches.
Yeah.
Will Johnson, 75 and 7/8 inches.
Yeah.
Siobhan Revell, 79, which is he's freakish, and 3/4 inches. I looked down the list. He has the third lowest wingspan of all 34 of these draft eligible corners.
Yeah.
Who's lower than him? Well, Jabbar Muhammad, who's about 5'7", is around 71 inches, 71 and 3/8. And then Elijah Huzzy from North Carolina, who's also a smaller cornerback at 5'9", and he has a 72-inch wingspan. He's the third lowest wingspan, one of the lowest arm lengths, and that again, as much as the tape screams great player, you should take him. I had a hard time putting him in my top 10
That's fair.
because of that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And ultimately, 3 weeks from now, I think that's what's going to cause him to drop. I mean, I
It
don't
might.
see him. I don't see him as a top 10. He's not going in the top 10. I don't think he's going to go in the top 20. I think he's going to be in that 20 to 30 range. For that reason. So I completely get it. He's such a fun watch. And I think that he could be one of the league's best nickel corners when all is said and done.
Let's talk about the D tackles if you don't mind. Yeah, like, can you mention talk about our D tackles for a second here, because we put Nolan at 6. He's our 6th overall player, which I think will shock some people, but I don't think you're too shocked by that.
No.
And we had Harmon as 9, which is a big difference from where you had Harmon. So what are your thoughts on those two?
I mean, Nolan. So Nolan. He's like Sheldon Richardson, back in the day. Maybe this is putting him on a pedestal a little bit, but a little bit of Fletcher Cox type of action. I think that the amount of juice that Nolan has is insane, and so that doesn't shock me at all. And it wouldn't shock me if he went really early. Derek Harmon, I can see it. I think he has the most versatility. I think would be the right word in terms of where you want to play him on the line. I think he could be successful at everything. I think he is a plus run defender. And I think he has some clean wins on tape from a pass rush perspective. I just had a few more questions about his upside as a pass rusher, which is why I had him a little bit lower.
Mm-hmm.
But from a versatility perspective, I think you can't get much better in terms of, do you want him, at nose? He can play nose and 2-gap. If you want him at 3 technique, you could even put him at 5, and he'd be.
And he did that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm not surprised that you would have Derek Harmon that high, and I think consensus probably will have him not leave the first round. And I feel like that's pretty clear. He's not going to make it out of the first round.
And I'll say, to your point, I think the upside argument is totally fair. And I don't know if I would actually draft Harmon this high because of it. But where I think it's deserving based off of what I saw from him being this high is you got into it. He's just such a good, well-rounded player. He's so intelligent. We talked about this last week because he was one of the guys we reviewed last week. He's constantly directing people on his line and diagnosing the offense and readjusting and shifting the line. That was up to him. And he's a guy who, to me, is a guy who, he didn't win every rep. No guy wins every rep, but I almost never saw this guy lose a rep. He always put himself in an advantageous position to affect the play if it came his way. Even if it wasn't like him straight up winning, he put himself in a position where he can impact the play in some way. And he just had such good hands, and he just was really impressive to me in that sense. He's not doesn't have the greatest anchor of the guys in his class. He's not the most dominant pass rusher, this guy in this class, but he is such a high floor player in my mind.
Yeah, he is.
He doesn't go backwards.
That's a great take.
No. Like, you watch him on film, and the one thing I look for is how often does a guy get pushed backwards, either on a double team or just one-on-one. He never goes backwards. He either stands his ground against a double team and then sheds and makes a play on the ball carrier, or he just gets right through the line of scrimmage. And he doesn't always win, like you said. He wins a lot. He had a 17.6% pass rush win rate for an interior lineman. That is absurdly elite. 17.6%. That's approaching edge territory.
And something I pointed out last week, Sal, if you look at how those check out, they aren't sacks, they aren't QE hits, they are a shit ton of QB hurries, which I think is why he gets
43.
knocked a little bit. Yeah, because
Yeah.
he's not necessarily like always shows up as the most dominant player, but that kind of goes back to what I was saying. He's always just finds a way to affect the play one way or another.
Yep, we loved him. But I agree, he's not going. He's not going this high in the draft. But is he going? I would be stunned if he's sitting there at pick 34 for the Giants. I really would be. And if he is, I'd be hard pressed to find anybody else I would take over him at that spot.
Yeah, I agree. It would be surprising. But weirder things have happened. We'll see.
Where we differ also with you is we have Warren at 11, which I think you have him somewhere in that territory. We have Cam 12, Shedeur 13. We have them much, much closer than other people. We're going by our grading system, and we had them graded almost equally. Um, we kind of cut off our first round grades at that point. And we said, we'll let the quarterbacks in, and like, it was kind of like that, right? Like they're good enough to take in the first round, so we're gonna put them in here. And that was it. Like, I think last year we were up to 20 first round grades?
And then we had like another 12 like first to or like no, it's like
20. No, we had like another 20 something first to second grade. We only have crazy. We're only about 12, 13 deep in first round grades here. And then honestly, first to second wasn't that deep either. We go from 14 to 28, and that's it. Like I have to look back at your list. I think you're somewhere similar.
Yeah, my first to second ends. Well, I'm at 28.
Yeah, so right, same with us. Yeah, you cut off your first to second a little bit later than ours. Then you got up to 17 with solid first. We got up to 13, but other than that, like first, like at 28, like I think that's sort of it, right? There's about 28 players in this draft that I think are solid first to second grades, and then you're just talking about second round grades for the rest of them. Mm-hmm. That's the class. There's not a lot of difference here between picks like 13, 14, and 50.
No. I actually find it quite interesting. So you guys had a very similar grade to Colston Loveland that I did. There are a lot of people that think Colston Loveland's a top 10 player. I know Daniel Jeremiah has him in his top 10. So I kind of want to hear why you guys don't have him quite so high. Because I
wanted him higher.
Yeah,
I wanted him higher.
That's a funny one to ask about because
we fought about this.
This was a compromise pick. I had him as I had him as a second round prospect of mine. Sal had him as like a high, like he had him as a clear first, and we compromised on a first to second. I'll tell you from, Sal can tell you his opinion on why he's a little bit higher. I'll tell you for me, I like Loveland, but, I don't think he's like a true inline tight end. And I think that, that makes it harder to be successful tight end in the NFL. It really makes you have to be a high end receiving tight end to succeed. So that hurts his floor a little bit, in my opinion. And to me, one of the most important things that I want, and I've seen a lot of successful tight ends, is guys who are really good after the catch. And to me, that's not what he is. Colston Loveland he's really, really good receiver, really nuanced receiver, but he's not a guy who gets the ball and I see like constantly breaking tackles and running to the end zone. So I was a little lower on Loveland. Sal, why you had him above Warren? So tell us why you like Loveland so much.
Yeah, I mean, I am of the opinion that he's going to be a better tight end in the NFL than Tyler Warren, and I'll stick to that. And here's my rationale. And there's not a ton of data this year to back that up. He had a down year, but if you watch Michigan football, this man produced with literally no quarterback on the roster.
It was like yeah. I mean that is fair.
He had no quarterback on the roster at all. And like there is a drop off in what he was able to do this year compared to last year, like in terms of impact. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a tight end, 2.67 yards per route run. He was still very productive. He had 56 receptions for 582 yards. It's down from last year again with no quarterback. He still put up 5 touchdowns. I I would agree that yak is not his strong suit. He only gets about 5 to 6 yards per yak per reception. You want more than that from a tight end. I totally understand that. But this is not your traditional tight end. He's kind of like the modern Isaiah Likely, to some extent Darren Waller type receiver tight end, and he's a real weapon in the passing game if you use him properly. You saw the Wolverines with JJ McCarthy use him and spray him
Yeah.
all over the field,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
He was a weapon. Or he's a like this is a guy where if you have a middle of the field offense, right? Like McVay, O'Connell, like compress it, run crossing patterns, run seam routes, and you have a quarterback with good ball placement and accuracy and timing. This is a guy who can run away from players. Like he's not going to break a lot of tackles and all that, but he has the ability to run really good routes. He has excellent hands, and he's going to be a real pass catching threat, almost like an extra wide receiver. And that has value. You saw today Trey McBride get $19 million per year. Monty, you and I have talked about this. That tight
Mhm.
ends are a financial cheat code, right?
Mhm.
When you look at production in the passing game, in the receiving game, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, tight ends get paid 50 cents on the dollar compared to their wide receiver counterparts for the exact same production. About 50 cents on the dollar. So again, I see Colston Loveland as one of the few guys in this class that has that kind of pass receiving upside where he can be that kind of a threat. So I would have had him higher than Warren personally, but I totally understand that, the traditional yak metrics and stuff are not where you want them to be. So we compromised. I would have had him a lot higher, but Monty would have had him a lot lower. We put him wherever we put him. I forgot what it was, 23 or something like that.
Yeah. And yeah, it's just, I mean, simply to me, it comes down to preference. I
25.
I like guys who can block, and I like guys, and if you can't block that, that's gonna hurt you. I'll take you later, but I like guys who are good after the catch. That's really what I love in a tight ends, and you'll see that on a guy we both like. I saw a guy you were pretty high on too, coming up here. But what other thoughts do you have here? Anything else you notice in this range that you wanted to talk about?
How do you feel
Yeah,
about James Pierce?
James Pierce.
Yeah,
So we put him at 22. Where did you have him?
I had
You had him
him
somewhere similar.
similar.
22.
I
You had
had
him 22.
him at
No,
22. Yeah.
22. Yeah. Monty, you want to tackle James Pierce? I know you loved him.
Sure. I was higher on James Pierce than you. I thought he's a guy who had really, really good first step and speed. Maybe not the bendiest guy in the world, but I loved his first step. He's been very productive, causing pressures over a couple years now. And he has I like his swim move, I like his rip move, and I think he's a guy who can contribute in coverage. He's definitely a guy who really is more finesse than power at this point in his game.
He's
But
all finesse.
yeah, but
Yeah.
he really is. But I do see a guy who's just been very, very productive, like elite production over the last couple years. For at least, he doesn't play the most reps compared to it, and you can weigh that in. Like, yeah, he's more fresh. Of course, he has a higher pass rush win rate and things like that. But he has an extremely high pass rush win rate. He tested off the charts, at least from straight line speed. Not as much as the GLD drills, which checks out a little bit on tape. But I think at worst he's going to be like a top pass rush specialist in the NFL if he's not a crazy person like seems like he might
his
be.
motor worries me.
Yes.
Okay. That's fair.
His motor was the reason. So I think from a pure talent perspective, Monty, I think he's top 10 in this class.
Okay.
But his motor, like he runs very hot and cold,
Mhm.
which means he's gonna be an Eagle. He's gonna be drafted by the Eagles, and he's gonna
He's gonna be great.
That's just how it's gonna be.
They showed that simulcast of him running with all Eagles. I'm like, he's an Eagle,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. He feels like he's gonna be an Eagle. But and I know there's been some chatter about him being like not the greatest dude. But
He's a bad team. He's a bad teammate. You just say it, right? Like his defensive teammates did not like him.
yeah, I don't think he put in full effort, and I think you could see that in some of the games. that always gives me pause. But he's so talented. So I found it really interesting that you guys had him at the same level, same ranking as me, and so. But apart from that, I don't, there's not much here to pick apart. I'm a bit lower on Max Hairston.
That was one I was gonna say. I know I saw you were a little lower in him.
Yeah, I think he's just kind of a smaller guy. I just didn't think he was as fluid as some of the other corners. Like I really like Azaria Thomas. I didn't think he had the same level of fluidity, same level of stickiness as some of these other guys. Especially playing off. Kentucky. You saw with Drew last year. Sometimes their coverage schemes are a little weird, and it's one of the reasons why I don't know. I just did not enjoy watching him. I can't really put the words.
I remember that from last year with Drew, so I get it.
It was painful to watch.
It's boring.
Yeah.
And
In fact, I'll be honest. When we did Maxwell Hurst at the beginning of the year, we drew straws because we knew one of us had to watch that shitty Kentucky defense again, and Monty lost, so he had to watch him. I was like, I'm not watching that shit again.
And it's funny. I came out I was like, oh shit, I have to watch this. I actually came out impressed. Like I thought they used him a lot more, they had him play a little bit more up on the line of scrimmage on these guys than they did with Drew, which was impressed me. I'll tell you the main reason I put him this high, because I liked Maxwell Harris. I'm wrong. I was a big fan of him. I thought he could be a really good sleeper in this draft. That's how I looked at him. I thought he was gonna be a perfect 65 turn. But ultimately why I did raise him this high in my big board is, we're going to talk about guys like Kenneth Grant, Shamar Stewart, Micah Williams, those people along those lines. If you are, a 5'11 corner who runs a 4.28 and has good tape, you're going to go high, and the NFL is going to value you. He jumped almost 40 inches. To me, it was just a guy who I liked his tape, has solid measurables or solid size measurables, and then just tested off the charts. And I'm like, if I'm going to give other guys a boost for their athleticism, this guy's a guy who deserves it. This guy who truly deserves a boost for his athleticism, because I already liked him as a player before that.
That's fair. That's definitely fair.
Yeah. And you saw with Max Melton last year, right? He went a lot higher than people thought he would go because he blew up the combine. He ran fast. It doesn't matter for every position, but for cornerbacks who have good tape, who already showed the ability to have fluid hips and can, win in different ways in man coverage, press, and in off zone, and can click and close well, which he does. He does all that really well. If you can also run with the high end speed, you're gonna probably go either in the first round or in the early part of the second. That's just typically where these guys do go.
100%. I can't disagree with that.
So with that said, that was the end of that one. Let's go into the second rounds here. So yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to anybody who's listening. We haven't really been reading this off. Our second round, we start here at 29 and it goes up to 41, and it goes Darius Alexander, Kenneth Grant, Shamar Stewart, Michael Williams, Xavier Watts, Gray Zabel, Quinshon Judkins, Tyleek Williams, Siobhan Ravel, Benjamin Morrison, Andrew Makuba, Trey Amos, and Malachi Starks. What are your thoughts there?
So you guys have a lot. Oh, you guys, it looks like you guys like the corners a little bit more than I do this year. I'm just not a fan. I didn't really enjoy watching Benjamin Morrison at all. Trey Amos, I struggled with where to put him. When he plays off, he's very awkward. He's very, very awkward. I think he's another good sort of man cover. You can try and press him. He's got good size. So I think that's reasonable. But just in general, I wasn't a huge fan of the secondary this year. Quinshon Judkins is another guy that jumps out to me that you guys are a little bit higher on. Where do you have him and Travion Henderson? What's sort of the difference between the two for you guys?
You're a little higher on Henderson, so why don't you
I
take
am.
this now?
I like Henderson. I personally, I think that Judkins is more of your classical three down back who can kind of do everything. And whereas I think Henderson's a little bit more of a specialist, a little bit more. Judkins has been healthier through his college career, where Henderson has dealt with, broken foot and some injuries along the way. But in short, I think the difference is fairly minuscule. In terms of overall grading, I think if we had gone past 50, Henderson would have been right there. And we just kind of ran out of space at some point, but I don't think there's a massive difference. Again, like I said, from picks 14 or 15 to about 50, I think you can almost throw a dart at a wall and, and get almost the same kind of like random rankings. I think there's very little difference here for a lot of these guys. So I like Judkins more if you're looking for the all-arounder. If you put a gun to my head and I could choose either one, I might choose Travion Henderson because I just love how explosive he is.
Yeah.
See, that's kind of how I am with Judkins. I feel like when I watch Judkins, it looks like he got shot out of a rocket. I think that he has a crazy acceleration, and for his size, he has pretty he's really athletic. He has good contact balance. I don't necessarily. I have trouble with these running backs because talk about muddy. These running backs get muddy. I mean, I like all these guys, so I'm just like, to me, I see for me, the reason we gave him a really good grade when we did him earlier in the year, so that was part of the reason why, we put him here. Being a bigger guy, a more athletic guy, a guy who was, like early breakout age, was the national freshman of the year, was a 4-star recruit. I think just all that for me is kind of why I like him here. But to be honest with you, I'm not after Murray and Hampton, I'm really not touching. I don't want to be the third team take a running back because I don't think there's enough juice compared to all the rest of these guys.
I agree. I really wish Siobhan Ravel didn't tear his ACL, or was that his injury?
Yeah, he tore his ACL like week 4 or something. Yeah.
He would have been right up there, I think.
Yeah.
I
think he would be a top. I think he would have been knocking on the top 10 door, as good as he looked early on in last year and his traits.
Yeah, and I want to, when we officially kind of finish out our board here, it's kind of just our first take on it. I want to try to add some some flags and stuff, because I'll tell you, Benjamin Morrison and Ravel, they're guys we graded earlier in the season before they got hurt, and we really liked their tape. And at this point, I have a trouble just I don't want to punish them too much for what I don't know about, how they're going to come back and things like that. So to me, my only choice is to, maybe ding them a little bit, move them down a little bit more in a tier, as you can see here is kind of towards the end of the tier. But I can't, to me, I can just flag you, and then I can't assume if you're going to come back the same or worse.
Yep. How do you guys feel about? Do you guys have Tyler Booker in the last 10?
We do. Yeah, Tyler Booker was our last.
Oh my God!
Where did you have Booker?
I had Booker. Where was Booker for me? I had him pretty late too.
Yeah, you did.
We had him at 45, and we had him at 50. And I'll be honest, 50 is all right. We should throw this guy a bone and get him on the list. That's what it was for us.
I actually appreciate you guys putting Harold Fannin in as high as you did. I didn't. I was scared. I put him at 52, so I put him in that sort of next tier, so not too far. I mean, he's either going to be like the world's greatest fullback, or he's going to be an actual weapon. Because he's probably, if you're talking about fun people to watch, he probably is the most fun player to watch.
He just wins.
He just, it's incredible. But that size, that's where, you know, how you guys have issues with Jade Barron, and sort of the size for that position. It's kind of the same thing with Fannin and me, but I mean, like, if he hits, like, he will hit.
And you put him at 52. That's really high compared to consensus. Like, we were a little bit higher, but I was happy to see where you put him. Like, okay, another Fannin guy. You know, I'll say it's funny. I feel like Fannin's getting. I feel like he's getting a lot of knocks for not being athletic, quote unquote, because he looks really stiff when he plays, which he's stiff.
He is stiff.
But like, what? But like, why do I care if he is stiff when it doesn't affect like his way? This dude has the more force missed tackles. He has like his agility testing was like very, very good. Like, yeah, he's stiff, but he's still like doesn't affect how he plays. He just looks funny when he does it. He just looks. That's the only thing it really does to him. Like,
we also are trying to stay true to our grading system, like as much as possible, right? So this year we implemented our grading system for each prospect level, and we kind of, you know, we're sticking by it. Like, and that's just based on pure film review. It wasn't just on traits and stuff. So it was just, how do they look on film? How do they meet the metrics? And I don't know if you followed us at all doing this, but we went with the Bill Walsh scouting guide and the things he values position by position. We created the grading system, and you know, obviously it's a very, very imperfect science, but it's as precise as we can make it, right? And just to be objective in evaluation. So we try to stick with that as long as like players didn't fall off or anything by the time we did our reviews. And Fannin didn't. Like, he was our tight end one. Just purely watching the tape, he was easily our tight end one. Like, he was better than everybody else. He's just more productive. He wins. And I think, Monty, we mentioned it when we did the episode. He's not a great athlete. Like, you watch him and you're like, how is this guy so productive? He's not a great athlete. He's not overwhelmingly powerful or anything, but he's still a very good blocker. He's versatile. He can work in line. He can work in the slot. He's great on vertical routes. He's not this amazing route runner, but somehow, some way, the guy gets himself open. He catches everything, and then he runs with the football. Like, he makes plays like a wide receiver with the football. It's hard to ignore that.
We say this every year about a guy, but especially this year because they just got rid of Debo. Kyle Shanahan's going to find this guy and find a way to use him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Fannin, or, you know, the other guy that feels the same to me is Jack Beck. Beck.
They're both tight ends.
Feels the same. You know, they're both Shanahan boys, I think.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. But yeah, I think, you know, we tried to, like, we had really high grades on Fannin. So I don't know. We put him at the top of like a tier we felt he belonged in, essentially.
We have so we're lower on, so we're our safeties, I think, are worth discussing. We loved Andrew Makuba's tape. Love this guy. Remember, he's a converted cornerback to safety, transfer from Clemson. And I mentioned earlier the way he developed synergy playing alongside Jade Barron was really impressive. Talk about a guy who used his ball skills as a cornerback and translated to safety. My goodness, he's all over the field. I think he had like 5 or 6 interceptions. He was everywhere, but he was also a thumper. Like, the guy was an enforcer. I did not expect that on him. He's so, like, he's on every play. Kind of like Danny Sussman. Like, there's just some guys who are around every play, and he's always around every play. I loved him.
He's got that honey badger type mentality to him.
Yeah.
I mean, so I had him at 64, so I had him a little bit lower, but I mean, I think it was more a size issue for me with him at safety. I typically I like my safeties a little bit bigger, but that was really it. I mean, which is funny, right? Because I didn't have an issue with Jade Barron being as light as he was, but as that enforcer in the back, you know, I wanted him to be just a little bit bigger, but I can't, you know, disagree with anything you said. That's kind of why I like Malachi Starks. I really think that Starks is also, you know, in that same sort of enforcer type build. And I think that he can play some of that nickel the same way that
Brian Branch.
Brian Branch. Yeah, I was be like,
Yeah.
who's that Detroit Lion guy? Brian Branch. They're very similar.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
And so, I mean, that's why I had Starks way so high. But I'm not hating on Makuba. I think that he can be. I don't take issue with this ranking. Let me put it that way. Nick Wari, big hitter. He's just like a missile.
And he's
And
got some
there's
ball
always
skills.
he has some ball skills. I feel like he's gonna be like a team's like Cam Curl. Like that's how I kind of see him.
Okay.
They're gonna want to use his size, and they're gonna want him to be an enforcer. Yes, he does have some ball skills, and that's why I think Jeremiah has him super high. I don't know how high, but I know he has him in his top 20.
Maybe in the top 15. Like he had like 14 or 15 on his list. He was pretty high.
Yeah. Because he has that size and he has that movement ability. But I think at the next level, I think a team's just gonna fall in love with his size and his aggressiveness, and I think they're just gonna have him be that thumper.
I
I
like
mean,
him.
yeah.
I just didn't see a guy
didn't-
play to the speed
I
and
didn't-
athleticism and stuff.
I didn't like him. I think playing safety is probably the most cerebral position on the defense, outside of maybe like a Mike linebacker. Um, and you need to be able to quickly diagnose plays, anticipate where the ball's going, and you got to be there, right? I want to see my safety in on every play. I want them finding the ball carrier on run fits. I want them in a passing, on a pass play, diagnosing where the ball is going. Like that's what I'm looking for. I don't care what your testing speed is. In fact, it's irrelevant to me. It's are you getting there? And Emenuari has all the tools, but he's a pretty poor diagnoser of plays. He's always I always what I saw in his tape was he was always a few steps late getting there. Like he just didn't diagnose things well. His anticipation wasn't good. And yes, he's a big thumper because he's a big, strong kid, and he can use that speed to do things. But I just I feel like he's going to be. He was just too often a non-factor in games, and I couldn't get around that when we were ranking him.
Yeah, I agree. All right. I mean that's basically our 50. We're pretty late into this, but do you want to just quickly run through your last bit here and just highlight a couple guys, and we'll close this thing out?
Sure.
I'll pull it back up for you, and I'll let's move into highlight a few in your late day 2, early 3, and that you liked or you put higher than most people, or you put lower, whatever it is.
Let me say this about Tyler Shuck. I really liked him. I think he has prototype size. I think he has great accuracy. But like Sal said at the beginning, he's going to be eligible for Medicare if Medicare is going to exist. So that's him. I wasn't a big fan of Landon Jackson. I know a lot of people like Landon Jackson quite a bit. Chris is asking who my 4th ranked QB is. That would be Jalen Milroe. Although I have Milroe and Dart pretty close.
We had them back to back also.
Yeah. Age is a thing. Ageism is a thing. Especially when it comes to quarterbacks, you've done all your development already, right? So how much better
What are you now? Exactly.
I didn't like so Landon Jackson is someone I think I'm lower on than a lot of people.
I am too.
I'm not. I like him. Leo, that's like a good. I'm sorry.
I mean, I think people will look at Landon Jackson and be like, he's like, George Karlaftis or one of these like really high, and he is a very high motor guy. I just didn't see the same athleticism. I think he tested really well, but I just didn't see that pop up. And I think he loses a lot of leverage battles. He will lose a lot of leverage battles.
One real
Imanor,
quick.
we kind of talked about already. Let's go down a little bit. Bashal Tutin, my guy. I love Bashal Tutin.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. Tell me about, because you have him high.
I have him very high. I think he is very straight line, but he is extremely fast. He is extremely fast. And I think that where a lot of these really fast guys go wrong is they don't really have the vision to go with it. He's a good one cut and go runner. And I think what also makes him really kind of intriguing is he has some level of contact balance as well, which you don't typically see with these guys. Am I going to make a Devon A-Chain comparison? Maybe. I think that he's stiffer than A-Chain is. But which is why if he had the same level of wiggle, then he wouldn't be in the 50s. He'd be up there with Omarion Hampton and Ashton Janty. But I think that as a complementary back, you can do a lot worse than him as your speed back. I just really like him a lot. Cameron Scadabo. I mean, if you want to talk about contact balance, I think he's the king of that this year.
Yeah.
But the pros are different than college, right? And you need juice. I think that he has a place in the league. I don't think he'll be as successful. Damian Martinez and Raheem Sanders, I guess we're just talking about running backs. I think they're very, very similar. They're very, very similar. Again, bigger backs that are going to be more of that power back. Quinn Ewers, I don't feel like I need to talk too much about him. If you guys, how do you guys feel about Quinn Ewers? In terms of where you think he should be. I know he wasn't in your top 50, but where do you guys think he should be?
I'll let you go first, Monty, on Quinn.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the guy I would probably take after the quarterbacks that we listed. I think he's got the highest upside, one of the highest rated recruits ever. He's got very talented arm talent. He's not have like a rocket arm or anything like that, but his release is very good, and that guy can spin a football. But there's a lot of issues with his game right now. You could do like whatever pick you're taking with him, you could be lighting that on fire potentially, because he has some real concerns with his game. But if you get him with the right coach, he definitely has like starter tools.
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers, I actually had him graded out lower than even Monty did, because when you watch the tape, there's just no way you can grade Quinn Ewers high, right? There's just too many inconsistencies, too many issues with mechanical inconsistencies, ball placement, some of the decision making, but it also depends on which game you watch. Okay? So if you watch the Alabama game at any point, or you watch the Michigan game, he displays the traits and the ability of really like a top 10 NFL quarterback. Like really, like like there's not a lot of guys in this class who could do that, right? Maybe 2 or 3, right? And he's got that. He can make every throw on the field. He has really outstanding touch, I think, especially on some of these intermediate throws. He layers that ball beautifully. Throws a very nice catchable football. I think he's a pretty strong kid. He has a good, strong base. I'm not too worried about him physically in the NFL, despite his injuries. I think his problems are between the ears, really. And I don't know how you fix it. I think he needs a good coach and probably needs a good sports psychologist, to be honest, because I feel like when he's going hot, he's as good as anybody in the country. and then he just falls off for no reason.
Yeah.
One of the best examples in game of that, I was mentioning it on the space today, was um, if you remember the national semifinal game last year, Washington versus Texas. I mean, Michael Penix Jr. was putting on a clinic, and they were running away with that game. And then Texas fought their way back into that game. If you recall, like they had a chance to tie the game on the last play, and they were in the red zone. And I forgot who it was that was running the route. It might have been A.D. Mitchell running a corner route to the end zone. I forgot who it was, but he was open, and Quinn saw him and airmailed the ball into like the first row right, on the final play. He could have tied the game. And I'm thinking, why? Like, what the hell got into Quinn Ewers that he made that throw, right? So it's so frustrating because he was making outstanding throws. Bottom line to me is I would take a swing on Quinn Ewers over some of these guys who are being considered for day two because I think there's a lot to work with. And if you don't get a day one quarterback, I want the guy with the ability and the tools. If I can get him like early day three, late day two, something like that, pick 99, pick 105. If he's there, I wouldn't mind swinging on Quinn Ewers and letting him develop.
I just hope he isn't broken. That's really. I just hope he isn't broken. I did not like Dylan Gabriel. I thought that he should have, with the weapons and the setup that he had, I thought that he should have been more productive. I mean, he was productive, but I thought he should be more. He should have been more productive than what he was at Oregon. That and just the measurables. It's just. I think that he's a smart player, right? He's been in several different systems. With Oklahoma and then with Oregon. He profiles as like, one of those guys that's gonna be in the league for 7 to 10 years as QB2, QB3, may end up as a coach at the end of it, but I don't really see the same level of upside that some other people see with Gabriel. He's not someone that I would spend a day two pick on, at least. Day three, yeah, of course. But day two, he's not someone that I would be interested in at all. I think it would be very, very easy for me to find 20 players that I would take at 65, 99 over Dylan Gabriel.
I agree.
Yeah.
I actually like. I think it's worth discussing just for a brief interlude here about where quarterbacks go because I think I was listening to Nate Tyson. I think he was talking to Justin about this on his latest pod. It was an interesting conversation about where quarterbacks go, and if you guys heard it. And I kind of agree with Nate Tyson. Like teams have kind of figured like there used to be like the day one, the quarterbacks, the second round quarterbacks, but teams have figured out like the opportunity cost argument, right? Quarterback is so valuable and so important that if you have sort of like a borderline first, second round grade on the quarterback, you're going to take a swing on him in the first round. You're just going to do it because you don't want to miss on that opportunity. And I think what that's done is definitely push some guys who would have been more firmly entrenched as day two guys, early second round guys, really into the first round, right? And I think we're seeing that because it's a gamble worth taking. But what that has done is it has emptied out that day two quarterback grouping. And so you kind of have this polarization where you have the guys on day one, and then you don't see really quarterbacks go on day two much anymore. Maybe one guy will get taken at the top of round two or something. But for the most part, then there's this Sahara Desert of picks without quarterbacks until really the end of the third round, which is where guys will think, okay, I have a day three grade on this developmental quarterback. He has some upside. Everybody else is going to be thinking the same thing. I have picked 99. Let me take my swing here and just take it, right? And I think that's what I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we saw here. Like, would it shock me if 3 or 4 quarterbacks went in the first round? I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked, right? I think because of that because I think you can honestly say that Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroy, you can make a case that they have second round grades, right? We're certainly saying they're in our top 50. So you can make a case they have second round grades and that somebody will say, I'm going to take a swing on them. But after that, I really don't think anybody is swinging for a while. And that's what I mean. And I can even see those guys become victims to the fall. One of them, at least, can become victims to the fall.
Yeah. I thought it was an interesting conversation, and it's been brought up before, and I think the idea behind it makes a lot of sense, and it does play out in actuality at times. I think they brought up 2022 as example, and that was like a really prime example of it, where they had all these guys that they thought were gonna go second round, the Matt Corral, Malik Willis, Desmond Ritter, whatever. They didn't go to like 3, but for that, there's also the years where Will Levis fell to second and got taken to. Drew Lock fell to the second and was taken second. Like, teams don't always jump up in the first round, even though they probably should to get that 5th-year option. They don't always do it.
Where do you think they're going, KSI? Like, where do you think these quarterbacks are landing? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I don't think, I honestly don't think yours is going day 2. I think he's gonna go round 4. Same with Will Howard. I think a team's gonna take a chance on Will Howard. I think Gabriel's gonna be 5, 6.
I can see him not getting drafted.
Riley Leonard, I haven't watched him that much, which is why he's not up here, but I don't think he should play quarterback.
Tight end.
And then Kyle McCord, I haven't watched enough Kyle McCord to have an opinion on him, but I would assume based off of, just the TV tape that I've seen, he's probably a day 3 guy as well. I think it's going to be Milroe and Dart. If this is a year where teams will start to push in the first round, I think Milroe and Dart both have a chance to go in the first round. But if not, I think those are going to be the only 2 quarterbacks. And then maybe Tyler Shuck if a team's not scared away by the age. But I think those 3 would be like the day 2 guys in my mind. And the rest, I think, fall to day 3. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a decent shot Dart goes round 1. I wouldn't like bet on it, but I think there's a good shot.
Yeah.
I think I could see like a team trading up into like the back end of round 2 to make sure they get like a Milroe, kind of like what the Eagles did for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
I see something like that. And then I think Shuck will find his way somewhere in the 3rd round. I don't necessarily buy this like first round stuff, but I think he will find somebody will take a shot on 3rd.
I think Tyler Shuck is going to go on day 3.
I think he should, but I would not. He's just a lot of hype. I could see him going round 3.
Here's a question. Good. It's not good enough to overcome 7 years in college, 26 in September, and really, a lot of injuries. I don't know how that translates to good value.
Here's a question for you guys. Let's round it up, by I guess going back to Shedeur.
Mm-hmm.
If the Giants don't take him at 3, where do you think he goes?
6.
Even with the extension?
I don't think I'd be surprised if Tom Brady passed that much Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah. My take for a while has been that he's going 6 to the Raiders, but I was surprised about the guarantees in the contract that Geno Smith got. I thought this was going to be similar to, what Darnold got, what Baker got, what Geno got last time. He got a clear 2 years like on top of the contract he already has of guaranteed money. So that makes me wonder if he really is in play at 6. But Geno Smith's older. He has a connection with Tom Brady. I'm certainly not going to rule it out. After that, I really don't know.
I think
Geno Smith's a tradable asset. That's the thing, right? Like, they're just assuring their future. Like, I think you could take Shedeur Sanders, hit it for a year, and then you can reassess this in a year and decide, hey, Geno's still good. Like, let's get some value out of him. If you take Shedeur, like, what's stopping you if you're the Raiders from doing that?
Yeah, it depends if it's guaranteed salary or signing bonus.
Right.
So I think in that same pod that Justin had with Nate Tice, they mentioned the Saints. I think that would be such a good fit in Kellen Moore's offense. I wouldn't be surprised. I also don't think I would be shocked if he fell and Sean McVay picked him up in St. Louis. I think he could work miracles with him in that offense. and with that offensive scheme. But it's gonna be interesting. It's really I'm very, very intrigued to see where Shedeur goes.
The one thing I can't shake right now with New Orleans is the fact that their offensive coordinator's son is the #1 quarterback prospect in next year's draft right now, and Doug and Garrett Nussmeier. I can't shake that. That's just gonna happen somehow.
That's also very fair. That's very fair.
I don't know if that's reason to pass on Shedeur, especially if they like him, but I just can't shake that's something in the works.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a world. I don't think it's a likely proposition. This idea that he's going to slide all the way down to like the 20s. I think that's highly improbable. It's not impossible, but I think it's highly improbable. I just think, much like the discourse around Penix and JJ last year, people thought, oh, they're going to get to the second round. I'm calling bullshit on this one. I think NFL teams have proven that they will, especially when it comes to the QB position, they'll play their cards really close to the vest, and they will not tell you if they have interest, because it's very important that they don't release that information.
Yeah.
And in general, NFL teams will value quarterbacks higher than what draft boards will tell you they should be valued at, right? I think that we see that consistently. So if you have a guy graded essentially as a first round player, which he basically is, right, across the board, and there's obviously debate about, is he first, second, first, is he, should you take him in the top 10, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't think anybody thinks this is a bad quarterback. They all think he's a very good quarterback. They have concerns about certain features of his game or certain traits, whatever it may be, right? That does not translate to me seeing a slide in the draft. I think teams are going to look at his production, what he does very well, the 80-20 rule of what actually wins in the NFL. That's why I want to take him at 3 personally. But I do think teams are going to be like, I'm going to jump at this opportunity to get my franchise quarterback. And if I have to sit him behind a guy who's here under contract for a year or two, I can deal with that problem in a year. That's a good problem to have.
Absolutely.
And I kind of wish the Giants would operate like that for once, especially since we don't have a quarterback. But other teams do operate like that.
And I'll say, if he does start to slide, I don't know if it will be us, but I think a team will jump on that as soon as they get within striking range.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a trade up if we do pass on him. I wouldn't be shocked if somebody trades up, because if we take Travis Hunter, presumably Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are gone, are the New England Patriots going to, if they get a call from somebody, say, hey, they would love at that point, right? They want Hunter. It's pretty clear that they would want Hunter. If they lose out on Hunter, would they? If they got a call, I think they would take it and say, all right, let's collect assets and we can build this roster around. We have Drake May, right? We can just do whatever at this point.
100%. I would love to trade down if I was them.
Yeah. All right. Good discussion. Anything else here, Monty? KSI, either one of you?
Yeah, no, that's all I have. Thank you. KSI, you have anything? Thank you for coming on.
No, I appreciate it. This was great. 2 hours flew by. I did not realize we had been talking for two hours and change.
Yeah, we do this all the time.
Yeah, it flies by every week.
This fucker had me doing 2-hour pods when I was fasting, and I had to get up in like 4 hours to eat my morning meal. Like I was like 30 days in a year, I'm actually like a decent human being. The other 335, I'm a complete dick, and you can't even let me sleep on those days. But anyway, no, we appreciate you as always, man. I hope we get you back on the show at times other than just this big board, because it's so much fun. Yeah. And thank you.
I'm always down.
Hit the like button. Yeah, hit the like button. Everybody, we are heading into the final 3 weeks of the draft. Thankfully, mercifully, one way or another, we're going to know what the Giants are going to be doing. They have a chance, one way or another, to remake this roster and really get us prepared for the future, with or without Brian Dable and Joe Shane. Maybe with a quarterback, we hope. We'll see. Last few weeks, we're going to have to figure out what we're doing, Monty. I think. Sorry, these shitty. Like pieces. But what we're doing a few weeks here, and we'll get some stuff out to you guys. We'll probably do some mock drafts going down the stretch.
Yep.
You hear me?
And you're quiet a little bit. So let me just close this out here to get us through this. But yeah, so we'll just go ahead and we're gonna probably get a mock draft. We'll give you our final mock big board and whatnot as we finish up here. If anybody has any ideas for us coming up here you want to hear about, we're open to it. But it's gonna be exciting. Final few weeks here. Just quick housekeeping. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, MONTECR5O. Sorry. Follow Sal, Queens_guy, and follow our guy at KSIXI. Great follow, and then follow our Twitter at He's a Giant Pod. But yeah, thank you again for coming on. We'll definitely have to do this again, and we'll have to do it for some other shows too. But yeah, that's all I have. So we'll see you guys next week. Go Giants.
Always a blast. Go Giants.
The Giants.